the biggest was the 1983 annual conference, Baltimore. I remember that my sister and my mother were going to go, and I was okay with the paper as I read it before annual conference, where it basically approved committed relationships. But Mom and Pam called me and said something about the amendment on the floor that was going to take out the acceptance of covenantal relationships. And we all felt like that was so important. But it was interesting to me that it was more important to my sister, and particularly my mother. It was important to her that the church approve who I was.
Mm-hmm. I made contact with a couple of parents about speaking on the floor, and only one said yes. This was Helen Brubaker, mother of Pam and Bev Brubakers. And I said, but there's a couple of things I'd like you to do if you're willing to do it. And I said, wear your prayer covering for sure. And I said, wear something very simple in your dress and sensible shoes.
So she wore like housebot shoes, and she dressed fairly conservative for church. She's a better woman. And they look, and what do they think when they see this woman with this little prayer covering? And she started out and she said, our daughter Beverly is, I think she said homosexual, and her father and I love her dearly. And this hush just fell over the whole room, because this woman, who also had white hair and a little bun under this prayer cap, wasn't meeting some people's expectations.
And the question was, what's the Church of the Brethren going to do for my daughter who's a lesbian? What's the church going to do to show support to her? And I remember Mom described afterwards that she had just stepped away from the mic, and the mix of people that she knew, friends, who physically turned their back to her. And that was contrasted with the BMC guys coming up to her and embracing her with tears running down their cheeks. And I think for her that was truly a God moment.
And there was so many parents of gay people there, and they were just amazing. I'm getting a little emotional here. But that sort of hit me. It was the first time that we had sort of a bunch of parents together there. Thank you to her for speaking and sort of very briefly telling their story to her.
Because of Bev, she knew so many gays and lesbians in the church who'd either been rejected by their church and their family or accepted by their families, but the parents were afraid what the church would do, particularly if the fathers, and it was fathers then, were pastors, that they would lose their jobs if the congregations knew their children were gay and lesbian. And she talked about how unchristian this was and how we needed to just love and accept. It was incredibly powerful.
The main thing concerning gay people is the page following the no covenantal relationships, where the church is supposed to be speaking out on human rights for gay people. To my knowledge, the church has never really pushed for those things. And yet that is as much a part of the paper as the section that says covenantal relationships are not acceptable.
So the original statement was a little more, or the church isn't of one mind about that. You know, there was a little space there. And that got taken out then. And so after all these years of responses and this, it's just heartbreaking.
From that point on, those who had amended the paper refused to acknowledge any of those kinds of conversations, did not want conversations to take place. As far as they were concerned, saying that covenantal relationships were not valid, were not equal, were not allowed, totally removed everything else from the paper. Where they got that, I don't know. But unfortunately, they prevailed for almost 30 years.
Now, if you have an armband, you represent what?
Represent people who believe that the church should be for all people.
I think the next generation is really going to make a big change in society and churches, mainly because they know people. They know gay and lesbian people.
It's so nice to see numerous other people pick up the movement, the boots, the efforts, the prayers. And it's so exciting to me to be alive and see that starting to take place.